Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So today we're going to talk about Donald Trump's devastating tax plan. And so the first thing I'm going to do is outline some of the key points of that plan and some of the things that it will do. And then I'm going to provide my brief commentary. And I hope that you all can provide your feedback as well in the chat room. Shout out to Water Sniper. Peace and blessings to you. This should be a brief hangout. I want people to let me know if you can hear me okay. I would appreciate it. So again, I'm going to start off by talking about this tax plan, talking about some of the key provisions, and then I'm going to go into my analysis of the tax plan and talk about how it can affect our communities. So I was reading the Washington Post and the New York Times, and I will include links in the description box to the sources that I relied upon for this video right here. And they talked about this tax cut. Peace and blessings to you, Doug. I see you. Thanks for tuning in. But they were talking about this tax plan. And they talked about how there are deep and permanent cuts for corporations. So the corporate tax rate is going to drop from 35% to 21%. And a lot of these Republicans, what they are saying is that this is going to benefit the public because it means that more corporations will come back to the United States and do business in the United States. They say that because of the high tax rate here in the United States, a lot of corporations have decided to leave the United States and set up shop in other countries, thereby providing opportunities for other people instead of American people. So they claim that this lower tax rate will bring more business to the United States, create more jobs and all this and that. Also, this tax cut reduces the tax rate for the top tax bracket. So people are going to go from 39.6% tax rate to a 37% tax rate. It also doubles the standard tax deduction. It doubles the child tax credit. And it also doubles the size of inheritance shielded from taxation, from the estate tax. So that's another benefit. Now, one thing that's important to point out is that these individual tax benefits are temporary, but the corporate tax benefit is going to be permanent. So essentially what you have here is a situation where they have thrown out some bones or some crumbs to average people to keep them appeased or halfway interested in this tax plan to hold them off for a while. And then after that temporary period passes off, many of these tax benefits may go away for the average person. But in the meanwhile, the corporations will continue to reap huge tax benefits under this plan. Now, something that is very important about this plan is that it eliminates the individual mandate under the Affordable Care Act. And the Affordable Care Act was commonly known as Obamacare, and the individual mandate is the provision that requires most people to have health insurance or they have to pay a penalty. And the reason why that is important because it gives the insurance companies incentives to lower premiums, because if everybody's required to have insurance, that means you have healthy young people in the system being insured, and you also have elderly people that are more sickly and stuff like that need more medical care. So that way, by having so many people participate in the system, they're able to lower the premium rates for most people. Now, I was also reading in the New York Times about how this also opens up the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge in Alaska to oil and gas drilling. So that was another provision. There was a part of this tax plan that people really didn't talk about. And I'm going to break down some of these things, go into them in a little bit more detail, talk about like Donald Trump's position and how he tried to cover up certain things. So let's get into it. Like the first thing that comes up under this tax plan is this. It will result in a $2 trillion debt to the nation. So, you have a lot of these Republicans that are conservative when it comes to fiscal matters. They always talk about we need to cut down government spending. We need to save expenses. We need to make sure that we keep the national debt down. But here they are supporting a plan that is going to cause the United States to go in further debt, in debt by $2 trillion. That proves that these people are hypocrites. They don't have any problem going into debt for things that benefit them and their buddies. They don't have any problem with the United States being in debt in order to promote the interests of the ruling class in this country, in order to promote the interests of the corporations and the rich and powerful. And it just exposes their hypocrisy. And the thing is, with this $2 trillion debt that they're going to create, it's going to cause them to even further cut back on social programs. They're talking about ways to make up for that debt. So that means that poor people are going to suffer as a result of this tax plan. That means that they're going to cut programs, and we've heard about some of the proposals, cutting Section 8, cutting food stamps, cutting other beneficial social programs. And that's going to have a disproportionate effect on the Black community. You know, when we see welfare cut, when we see housing aid cut so that people aren't able to get housing and stuff like that, we're going to see a rise in people being without housing, people being without the bare necessities, food. And as I mentioned before, you know, this plan eliminates the individual mandate from the Affordable Care Act, meaning that 13 million people may be without health care. Also, it means that the premiums may go up. I touched on the premiums earlier, but when you have an elimination of this individual mandate, that means more people are going to leave the system, meaning people that are younger may decide, well, I don't need health insurance and all that kind of stuff. And what's going to eventually happen is that for the people that remain in the system, their insurance premiums are going to go up. And many of these people that are going to experience these hiked up insurance premiums, many of those people are Donald Trump supporters. Many of them are white, middle class, or older people who rely on medical insurance for their medical care. And when their premiums go up as a result of this tax plan, they have no one to blame but themselves for supporting Donald Trump and his agenda. And that's what's going to happen. Also, you have, you know, the whole thing with Donald Trump trying to keep that aspect of this bill a secret. You know, he didn't want the media to talk about this, you know, what he describes as fake news. He didn't want them to know that this individual mandate was going to be eliminated as a result of this passage of this tax plan. And that speaks to something. That speaks to the nature of Donald Trump. It speaks to his intentions. It speaks to like the way he does business. I mean, if he's not upfront with the people, you have to ask yourself, why is he trying to hide this? What does he have to hide? Why is he trying to keep this under wraps? And, you know, the answer is simple. I mean, this bill is very unpopular in the American public. Most people do not support this bill. Most people are against it. And many people support the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. They support it because it has expanded insurance coverage for a lot of people. Many people who did not have health insurance now have health insurance because of Obamacare. Millions of people are able to be covered despite having pre-existing conditions that would have been not covered under the prior system that was set up. So a lot of people support Obamacare, and they see this as a way of chipping away at Obamacare, you know, by getting rid of this individual mandate. It's a step towards eventually eliminating Obamacare, and that's what they want to do. And again, that will result in millions of people being without health care. This is Donald Trump's idea of making America great again, by making people without health care, by making people homeless again, you know, people who rely on Section 8, by making people hungry again, with not being able to have food provided for them, for poor, vulnerable communities. This is what it's going to lead to. This is what Donald Trump is leading the American people to. And also, it is very important to just talk about like how Donald Trump is going to personally benefit from this tax plan. These corporate tax cuts are going to personally benefit Trump and his business empire. And, that speaks to a whole conflict of interest. I mean, it is a major conflict of interest when you have somebody passing laws that are designed to further their business interests as opposed to furthering the interests of the American people. This man is going to profit from this. He is essentially using government to create laws designed to further his financial interests as an individual. And, I just think that that's a new low for this government. I mean, you've had people profit financially before, but this is sickening. I mean, this is sick that you have a man who's a corporate leader basically directly controlling the government in such a way that he ends up financially benefiting. Him and his cronies, these wealthy white men, are the ones who will benefit at the end of the day. And, he uses all this popular type of rhetoric about helping the working people and all this and that. But at the end of the day, he's all about promoting the interests of the power elite, the 1% class in this country. And, it's about time for people to call him out on this, man. And this whole thing about trickle-down economics, with this idea that somehow these corporations are able to get these tax benefits, then that means more jobs and blah, blah, blah. And it turns out that a lot of these companies, despite making record profits, they have not trickled down any of those profits to the average person by increasing wages or creating more jobs. They are simply sitting on the money in many cases and giving the money to their shareholders instead of using that money to expand job opportunities and increase wages. So this idea that somehow because this tax rate is lowered, it is automatically going to translate into more jobs and more opportunities, it's a lie. It's a means of promoting propaganda designed to gather and gain more support for this bill that is nothing but a giveaway to rich people. It's a bill that is paving the way to get rid of a lot of social programs, because they're going to point to this bill. They're going to say this is a $2 trillion bill that's going to cause all this debt and all this and that, and we have to compensate in some kind of way. And what better way to compensate than to take away many vital social programs that affect African American people, Latino people, and other so-called minorities in this country. And, I think the optics of the passage of this bill speak volumes. I mean, the fact that you had all these congressmen and senators surrounding Donald Trump, and you could see that most of them, just about all of them, share one thing, a couple of things in common. They are white, they are men, and most of those people are wealthy. Most of those congressmen and senators are people of wealth and means, and they are white men. You had a few women in there, but for the most part, it was white men. And you also had a token House Negro, Tim Scott, up there, playing the role of the token Negro to try to add some kind of semblance of diversity to that monolithic, all white group of people. This guy, for all intents and purposes, was nothing but a lawn jockey. Just like how back in the day, these racists would have a lawn jockey in front of their house, posing with his hand up like a submissive, good servant Negro. That's what this guy, Tim Scott, looked like. Him and Ben Carson, two token Negroes trying to create some appearance that there's some kind of diversity of opinion, that you had, black people on board with this plan, when the fact of the matter is that speaks to just the lack of diversity of that party. It speaks to, the lack of support that this bill has from Black communities, from so-called minority communities. And it speaks to just the nature of the Republican Party, man. And it's just a shame that you have people like a Tim Scott, who are so willing and eager to play the role of the House Negro, so eager and anxious to play the role of the token Negro. And it's a disgrace, man. And then also, not only is it a disgrace on the part of people like Tim Scott and Ben Carson, those members of Congress, they degraded themselves by basically sucking off Donald Trump, shining his shoes, kissing his ass, heaping all kinds of false praise and flattery upon this man for passing this tax bill. Down the line, the American people are going to see the consequences of this. And I hope that this is something that is used during the campaign, during the midterms, to help have a lot of these people voted out of office. A lot of these Republicans that were up there uh, grinning and happy and celebratory, I hope that they end up suffering because of it. I hope that they end up losing elections during the midterms because of this. So I'm going to look through your comments before I close out. I want to thank you all for tuning in. This is a brief hangout. I'm on vacation, so I have time to do these during the middle of the day. Yeah, so I see Water Sniper said that they moved their businesses out of the country to have an easier tax break and to pay less for labor. Yeah, I mean, that's true. A lot of they do move their businesses out because instead of having to pay a minimum wage, instead of being subjected to like, basic workers' rights and all that kind of stuff, a lot of these people, they move their companies to these developing countries so that they can charge the lowest rate for labor, and they don't have all these labor laws and standards to live up to and all that kind of stuff. And they do basically use sweatshops. That's what they do. I mean, that's the nature of these corporations. I mean, they are exploitive. They're not here to benefit the public or anything like that. They are in existence solely to make money. And, people really have it confused that they actually think that this tax plan is going to create more jobs. All it's going to do is give these corporations more money, and more likely than not, they're not going to use that money to create more jobs or to raise wages for people. They're just going to use it to dole out money to their stockholders and other people. And their officials, their management, like the CFOs and CEOs, they're going to have higher wages and all that kind of stuff at the expense of the average person. I see that B Money says that, shout out to B Money. He says that insurance premiums have already went up this year because of Trump. He says that he has the Obamacare plan because he's an independent contractor. Oh, he said his insurance went up nearly double for next year. Wow. And it's only going to get worse now that, a lot of people are going to be able to get out of this tax plan. And also, it's important to note that, like that, the end of the individual mandate that would take place in 2019, according to this, according to the sources that I've read and heard. Water Sniper said the rich stay rich, the poor stay poor. So how is America going to pay back that debt? And question the value of the dollar and all that stuff. I keep hearing about that Bitcoin. I gotta learn more about that. I'm gonna read up on that. I know that that's something that Boyce Watkins has been talking about, and I've heard a little bit about it, but I'm going to have to look into that. Shout out to S. Wiseman. Peace and blessings to you. Shout out to Elaine Lloyd. Doug said there's a market crash already predicted to come in the next few years. Wow. S. Wiseman said her insurance went up 75%. Wow, that's a lot. Yeah, that's a good point. That's Wiseman. I mean, all like Reagan talked about trickle down economics. I mean, this is something that they've talked about for a long time. I mean, under Bush, you had those tax cuts. Under Bush Jr., for lack of a better word, the son. They had those tax cuts, and we saw what happened to the economy under Bush. We saw how you had almost a collapse. It was like almost a depression. It was a recession under Bush. You had the mortgage foreclosure crisis. You had many major companies go under Bush, and this was at a time when they had those tax cuts that helped, put the nation in further debt. It's like they always have enough money when it comes to war, when it comes to giving away tax breaks to the rich, but when it comes to feeding poor people, when it comes to housing poor people, when it comes to education, when it comes to jobs, these people never have enough money for those types of programs. They always talk about cutting back those programs. And you're going to hear more about these cuts, in the coming days after Trump signs off on this bill. And Congress is heading towards a fight now. They're going to have a fight over the budget. And I wouldn't be surprised if they don't have a government shutdown over that. And B Money, is referring to Tim Scott. He said he talked about how they put that coon up front. Yeah, and that's not by coincidence, man. They had all those white faces, and they had to put some color in there somewhere to try to create some kind of illusion of inclusion or illusion of diversity. So they had to throw that house Negro up front. Because if you look at Congress, Congress is relative, you have some diversity now in Congress. You have, a lot of African American congressmen and women, but none of them, except for Tim Scott, he's the only black member of Congress that I'm aware of that stood in support of that tax plan. And that tells you a lot just by itself. I mean, just that mere fact speaks volumes. And so the situation with the inheritance tax, that means that, there's going to be less government revenue. Many times when people are wealthy and they pass away, they pass on their inheritance to their children and other beneficiaries. And now it's going to be harder for the government to tax that. The government is only going to be able to tax after, the inheritance reaches double the original rate as before. So that's a lot of money that the government is not going to have. And so when they don't have money, they look for things to cut. They look for programs to cut. And you better believe, like when they're looking for things to cut, the first thing that they go towards are things that benefit African American and other so-called minority people. That's what they look for. They don't go towards anything that benefits corporations. They're not cutting that. They're not going to cut the military. They're going to cut programs that benefit poor and people of color. Yeah, and B Money said the next economic crash is going to be devastating with the deficit and the cut in social programs. In these times of abundance, we should be preparing for difficult times. And S. Wiseman said that she knew that the Obama plan would end up hurting us. If you read through it, it clearly benefits the insurance and drug companies. Um, it would contribute to inflation. I mean, I don't think that Obamacare is perfect. You know, it has its faults and all that kind of stuff. But under Obamacare, millions of people who did not have insurance coverage now have insurance coverage. Under Obamacare, many people who were barred from insurance cover because of coverage due to pre-existing conditions and all that kind of stuff, they have coverage now. So there are a lot of benefits to Obamacare, and we're going to see just how important Obamacare actually is once these Republicans have their way and gradually dismantle the Affordable Care Act. You know, they've already started with one step by getting rid of the individual mandate. We're going to see how high those premiums go now that they've gotten rid of that individual mandate. And I think that a lot of people that criticize Obamacare, they're going to be missing Obamacare, you know, if these Republicans have their way. Just like a lot of people had all this negative stuff to say about Obama while he was in the White House. But now that they are living under a Trump administration, they have now learned to have a new appreciation for Barack Obama. You know, despite his flaws, and I'm not going to get on here and say that he's, you know, was an ideal president or he didn't make mistakes. You know, he's made plenty of mistakes and he's done things that I've disagreed with, but he has also done things that have been beneficial to the Black community and to the larger community. And now people are seeing just how beneficial he was when they have this right-wing tyrant in the White House, Donald Trump. And, you know, I just have to go back to this whole point, like about Donald Trump and these people basically kissing his ass and all that kind of stuff, sucking up to him. This is a man who is, you know, despite having all this wealth and power, he is an insecure, sensitive man who is dependent on people. He needs to have people who are loyal to him. He needs to have people who constantly praise him and suck up to him. And it's a shame that you had all these congressmen and women basically sucking up to him, you know, kissing his ass and all that kind of stuff, flattering him in order to make him feel good. And they look like they have degraded themselves by doing this kind of conduct. They look ridiculous. They look like they look like a bunch of groupies, you know, for lack of a better word. And it's just a shame to see elected officials behave in such an undignified manner. But anyway, let me just continue through your comments. I see Edek said, brother, you are level-headed, but a lot of these Black YouTubers, I suspect, took some Trump campaign, you know, probably worked for the Trump campaign um, to send Black people off in the wrong direction. So that's what Edek says, and that's a good point, man. Because you would think that, you know, you would think that some of these people actually work for the Trump campaign, and we know that those women, Diamond and Silk, we know that the Donald Trump campaign paid them off a couple of little dollars, you know, some gave them a few little coins or whatever, and so that's a blatant example of them being paid off. But I wonder about even some of these people who are so-called pro-Black, you know, the people who told Black people that elections don't matter, who told Black people that they don't need to vote, who told Black people to join a don't vote campaign. I mean, when I look at that kind of stuff, you know, I just wonder if these people, I mean, it makes me think about, were these people paid to help suppress the black vote? And, you know, that's what I wonder, man. Sometimes I wonder that. I mean, and I think that for the most part, a lot of these people were just ignorant, you know, uninformed, and they didn't realize what they were talking about. Now these same people want to whine and cry about Donald Trump this, Donald Trump that, white supremacy this, white supremacy that. But yet, when they had the chance to prevent this man from taking office, they did nothing but encourage people to sit on the sidelines and let this man be elected. That's essentially what they did. Yeah, and it's true that like certain aspects of the Obama plan had been ideas that had been floated before. You know, some of the ideas were borrowed from the Hillary Clinton campaign, and you know, in terms of the individual mandate, and then also there were prior Republican ideas that were similar to the Obama plan. And really, I think that the Obama plan was a compromise. You know, I think that ultimately what we need is a single payer system. Healthcare should be free for all people. It shouldn't be a for-profit enterprise. Everyone should be entitled to free and quality healthcare, regardless of how much money they make or regardless of where they work. Um, so, I mean, there are many downsides to Obamacare, but it's better than what we had before Obamacare. You know, it's much better than that. Shout out to True Royal Family. And as Wiseman said, I think black people did vote. Yeah, black people did vote. You know, I'm not saying that black people didn't vote. A lot of them did actually vote. But I think that when you have people that have large platforms where they're reaching hundreds of thousands of people, and those people use their platforms to discourage voting, I think that that did have an impact. And a lot of black people, you know, even though many black people did vote, there were many black people who did not vote. And we see this all the time. This is nothing new. Like the lack of voter turnout in our communities is problematic. I mean, we saw it like in the Atlanta election that took place a few weeks ago. We saw how low the voter turnout was. And at the same time, where you know where we have people downplaying the significance of the vote, we see that often many of these elections are decided by a few votes. That tells us just how valuable and how important our votes are. There's some election in Virginia, if I'm not mistaken, that's so close that it's a virtual tie, and they're supposed to do some uh, lottery or something like that to determine who's going to be the winner. I think they're drawing straws or something like that, drawing names from um, a canister or something to determine who's going to win that election. It's so tight. So we have to understand like how important our votes are. And then not only just should we understand how important our votes are, we need to make sure that before we vote for somebody, that we present them with an agenda and we know what their positions are with respect to our agenda. And if they don't adhere to our agenda after they are elected, we have to be the ones to hold them accountable. And I just think that right now, everybody that's listening to this video should make sure that you're registered to vote and that you vote not just in the presidential elections. You need to vote in the upcoming midterm elections. You need to vote in your local elections, because you can't complain about these problems that affect our community if you're not voting. You know, you have the power to determine who's going to be your district attorney in your community. And, you know, that determines whether or not this district attorney is going to pursue charges against police officers who have brutalized Black people. It deals with law enforcement issues in terms of making sure our communities are safe. You know, when you elect a mayor, you are indirectly electing who will be the police chief and what kind of policies that police chief will have in their police departments. You determine like how much funding your schools get by who you decide to vote for. And we are seeing with this election of Donald Trump that this is affecting every aspect of our lives, our taxes, like how much money we are able to take home, like how much, what social programs will be available to communities, what kind of policing policies we'll have in this country. You know, it deals with affirmative action and all these other issues of voting rights, etc. So we have to understand the importance of these elections. And you know, this whole point about Hillary Clinton winning the popular vote, you know, I get that point. She won, you know, she won the popular vote, but you know, we have an electoral college and all that stuff in this country, and you know, elections are determined that way. And you know, just to break it down real quick, like even though it's not by the overall popular vote, those electors vote according to the popular vote in their particular state. So, you know, it's just again another point that elections matter, you know, whether it's the presidential election or on the local level. Yeah, Doug, I do believe that we need to form a third party or support third party candidates, um, because if as long as we give unconditional support to any party, then we don't have that much power and influence over that particular party. Now we have far more influence in the Democratic Party than we do in the Republican Party. But often what happens is you have Democrats who take black votes for granted. And a prime example of that would be this guy, Doug Jones, who was recently elected in Alabama. You know, this man relied upon the black vote to get elected. And already he's making statements that suggest that he's going to go in a different direction, in a direction that is contrary to the interests of the black people and black women in particular who helped elect him. You know, he talked about how he doesn't see any need to for people to move forward on these allegations against Donald Trump. You know, Donald Trump has been accused of sexual harassment and sexual misconduct, and he's like downplaying that. He's saying that's not something that people need to press Donald Trump on. They need to get past it. Another thing that was troubling is that he said that he could vote with the Republicans on many issues, and he does come from a Republican state, Alabama. That's a red state. So he may, you know, vote on a lot of these issues in the same way that a Republican would vote. And it's up to the people who elected that man to make sure he doesn't. It's up to the people to hold that man accountable. And they should have held him accountable before he even got elected. They should have had assurances from this man on his various positions on the issues. So I think that after you vote for these people, that's just the beginning of the process. And actually, that's not even the beginning. The beginning is putting your money behind candidates that support your agenda, doing your research on these candidates, and holding those candidates accountable. That's what we have to do. All right. You can bear with me a second. Yeah, Lane Lloyd brings up a good point about how a district attorney can stop blacks from getting felonies for marijuana and being disenfranchised. Yeah, I mean, because a district attorney can decide, well, what kind of cases are priorities for our department. They can say, well, we're not going to prosecute these nonviolent drug offenses. We're going to focus on X, Y, and Z. They have the power to make those kind of decisions. So EDEC says, I vote. I don't listen to hustling pro-black YouTubers who don't have any answers, and they just want to vent for donations. Yeah, I mean, a lot of these people are nothing but entertainers, man. They don't offer the people any kind of programs. They are not organizers. They are not organizing anything. Not anything. The only thing that they organize are entertainment type of events where you have these people being entertained by debating one another. They're not building anything. They're not building up the community. They're not protesting against any kind of injustice in society. They're not trying to create any kind of reforms. These people are just here to entertain people for the sake of getting donations and speaking engagements booked. That's their sole function. They're not leaders in our community. And as I said before, like there's an interesting series that Lenon has on his channel. It's a whole series about these conscious internet-based leaders, where he just exposes a lot of them for being con artists and hustlers. And, you know, again, I strongly encourage people to check out Lenon series. It's a great informative series. So I encourage you all to watch that series. When I get a chance, I'll post the link in the description box again to his series. He's done like, I think it's like 8 videos back to back about these internet-based so-called conscious leaders. But yeah, a lot of them are hustlers, and I think a lot of them realize that they could benefit financially from having a Donald Trump in the White House, because that gives them something to complain about. It gives them something to get people riled up about so they could make money off of it. And, you know, I think that it makes it easier for them. You know, now, you know, the black man's not in the White House. It's easier for them to lash out at the system and stuff like that, and, you know, earn funds off of that. Um, and I think and part of the thing is this, man. I think a lot of them had a hard time dealing with promoting this idea that, you know, that American society can't change in any kind of way. They had a hard time dealing with the issue of progress in American society by having Obama in the White House. So a lot of these people just invented outright lies saying that Obama did absolutely nothing for black people. And that's just a blatant lie if you look at his track record. But that'll get me off onto a whole nother subject. But I've done, you know, prior video just outlining, you know, many things that Obama has done for the black community that has benefited the black community. But yet you have these charlatans, these hustlers, these con artists on here promoting this idea that he did nothing for black people. Because they had to come up with that. They had to try to explain away the fact that you had a black president in the White House, because that didn't fit the narrative that there was no progress or no step towards dealing with this issue of race in society. And as I've said before, we're nowhere near where we need to be in terms of race relations or progress and all that stuff. We have a long way to go in this country, but still there has been some progress, and a lot of people refuse to acknowledge it because that doesn't fit in with their particular hustle or their particular con. But again, I encourage people to check out Lenon series. And I see that there's a troll here. I won't even mention your name. I'm just blocking you. Just bear with me a second. I'm going to scroll through these comments. I don't even understand like why people decide to troll, man. You know, I don't understand the mindset of a troll. Like, you see, we're talking about important matters, and then a troll comes here talking about nonsense and vulgarity. You know, I just wonder what goes through their thought process. I think a lot of these people are mentally ill. You know, something's wrong with them. But anyway, that's all the attention I'm giving that person. I'm not even mentioning his name. Yeah, that's right, S. Wiseman. I mean, black supporters should have pressed Doug Jones and made sure our demands were secure, and you know, made sure that he would fulfill the promises before voting for him. You know, and we do, and you're correct, we do fall for empty words a lot of times. I mean, a lot of these politicians, as many people know, the only time you see them is around election time. They come to your churches, they come to your events, in order to impress you, in order to swindle you, in order to trick you and deceive you. But after the election, you can't get in touch with these people. After the election, when you have needs, they're nowhere to be found. And we have to end that whole situation. We definitely do. And I just think that we need to definitely hold that guy, Doug Jones, accountable, because there is no way that that man would have won that election if it wasn't for black voters. That election was so close that if black people sat home and said, well, we're not participating in this election, that guy, Roy Moore, would have been elected U.S. Senator. That's what would have happened. And I think that when people do this, when they get elected and they betray the black community, um, they need to be cut off, man, and they need to be dealt with. We need to make sure that they are held accountable, just like other communities do. Like if a candidate opposes the LGBT agenda, then that particular community, they get together their resources and they make sure that that elected official is held accountable. They do everything in their power to make sure that that person is not elected. The same is true for the pro-Israeli lobby. If a candidate doesn't support Israel, they make sure that there is another candidate that does support Israel, and they run that candidate against the candidate that doesn't support their Zionist agenda. And I'm probably going to do a video later on, another hangout about Donald Trump and this whole UN vote and this Jerusalem issue. I'm going to deal with that later. I'm probably going to do a whole nother video just talking about that and talking about like the influence of Zionists and government and all that kind of stuff. So look out for that. But yeah, I mean, we have to get like these other groups, like Latino groups, these immigrant groups. They press their issues. And in a lot of ways, we do. There are different organizations in the black community that do lobby government and do focus on these issues and that do actually conduct, surveys of these politicians and their voting records and all that stuff. But I think we need to do more of that in order to hold these people accountable. Shout out to Yvonne Robinson. Thanks for your kind words about the show. Yeah, I see True Royal family. I see what you're saying about the nasty troll. I blocked them. I probably will get moderators later on. I'm probably going to do that later on. Probably maybe in my next live stream, I may set a few moderators up because it is hard to keep up with the comments like in real time. Often when I get to them, it's like um, it's down the line after they've already caused some damage and stuff. But my whole thing is with trolls, my whole policy is ignore them, block them, and delete them. I try not to engage them, try not to give them any attention because that's what they feed off of. Just like a maggot feeds off of fecal matter, trolls feed off of negativity. And you can't feed these trolls. You just have to get rid of them. Just like you would get rid of any other pest, like a rat or roach or something else that's disgusting. Y'all are cracking up about those trolls. Yeah, I'm gonna set up some moderators soon. I'm glad you reported the troll, Elaine. You know, yeah. Here's another troll. I mean, I wonder. I just don't understand. Like, I just don't understand the mentality of these trolls, man. Why they do what they do and say what they say. And Yvonne Robinson said black people need to become revolutionaries again. These young folks don't know how to fight, only beg. Yeah, that's unfortunately that's true. We need like a more radical type of tradition. And I mean, we see it in some ways with respect to the Black Lives Matter movement, but even that is not as militant as like the Black Panthers back in the day, or other groups like SNCC and all that kind of stuff. A lot of these groups, they are instead of just like being a militant voice of opposition, a lot of these groups are trying to depend on the sympathy of white liberals and stuff like that, and they're trying to appeal to their sensibility and their sense of compassion or conscience. And we just need a more militant tradition. So I agree with that point. We need a more militant posture, and not just in posturing, but in terms of like actually fighting for actual results, in measurable ways, not just through rhetoric on social media, but through action that creates actual policy changes. Thanks, EDEC, for your support. And I see there's another troll in here. Hold on, y'all, 1 second. I don't know why I have so many trolls right here. I haven't had this many trolls in a while. So far, it's like 3 trolls. And I said, I see that S. Wiseman said you must be doing something right. Just look at the the butthurt trolls you're getting. Yeah, they are. I just wonder, like, why are they so butthurt? Why are they here? Um, I'm making them disappear gradually as I get to them. Yeah, that's Wiseman. I'm probably gonna get a few mods on here. Yeah, probably on my next hangout, I'll do that. I'll set y'all up as mods. You'll probably be one of them if you're willing to be one. And Doug said you need mods for real. Yeah, so actually, let me just set y'all up as mods right now. And True Royal family, let's see. Let me see if I could. I'm gonna add you as a moderator, S. Wiseman, and I want to make Doug a moderator. And I'll make True Royal. Well, I'll make True Royal a moderator, and Elaine. So y'all should be able to take out these trolls real easy. So Elaine's a moderator. So that should be a good number to start off with. So I see Doug said that some trolls are children and some are just a-holes. Yeah, some of them are children or teenagers and stuff like that. Like, I actually got a chance to see a real troll in real life. This guy that was making threats against somebody, and he was brought to court and charged and all that kind of stuff. And I got to see what he looked like. And he looked like what you would think a troll would look like. He looked like a loser. He's overweight and all that kind of stuff, a geek and all that kind of stuff. So, a lot of these people, they just have their own personal issues and they're using this internet platform as some kind of means to lash out at society, to take off, to get off their frustrations. And you have some people on here who are designed to cause conflict. They troll in order to create like some kind of beef or problems between YouTubers and stuff like that. So I don't give these people much attention, man. I don't do videos to them, and I always wondered like why prominent YouTubers will take time out of their schedules to actually do YouTube videos where they talk about these trolls and take time to respond to them. I don't even take them seriously at all, man. I just block them and delete them. Oh, I see. It's me. Mia says she's been waiting for somebody to talk about the negative things about this tax plan, and she doesn't understand what's going on. She says her niece says that she's going to be getting more money, though. Yeah, in the short term, like many average people may receive some kind of benefit from this tax plan, but it's temporary. The benefits that the average individual will receive are temporary, and also the benefits that ordinary people will receive pales in comparison to what the corporations and what the wealthy will actually receive under this plan. And then when you look at the cost of the plan and how they plan to pay for it, again, you're going to see them cutting back on a lot of vital social programs. And then people are going to see the real cost of this plan. They're going to see the social cost of it and everything. So I think that that's where it's going to play out when they have to try to reconcile, this $2 trillion debt that they're creating with other spending. So they're going to have to say, well, let's cut back on all these programs. They view African Americans at the bottom of the totem pole. So programs that benefit us are going to be some of the first programs that get cut and eliminated. And that's what we have to bear in mind with this whole tax plan. But we'll see how it works out, man. We'll see. They've had tax plans before where they talked about like how it's going to trickle down to the average person, and more likely than not, it doesn't. As I said priorly, as I said previously in this video, somebody said someone needs to get rid of the cave beast trolls. Hopefully, hopefully we should be covered now because we got a few moderators. Yeah, they are obsessed with black people. I mean, like just what like some of these trolls. Some of them were black though, without a doubt. Like some of them were black people. I have no question about that. But you have a lot of white trolls who, I mean, why are you even here? Like why are you on a platform that's talking about black issues? Why do you care about what black people think about various issues? Yeah, that's right, S. Wiseman. Ignore the trolls. Okay, so y'all should be set up as moderators, so y'all should be able to take these people out. And I'm not going to be on here much longer. I just want to go through your comments. Peace, Doug. I know you got to get back to work. I know a lot of people are working right now. I just happen to be off. Okay, so y'all should be able to moderate now. I see that True Royal Family said that I should get on Black Junction TV. I'm not familiar with that. I'm gonna Google search that and try to find it to see what it is, get more information about it. Good morning, Queen Sister. Shout out to you. I see y'all gonna be taking out those trolls now. Shout out to Teresa F. Peace and blessings to you. Yeah, that's right. Like as Elaine Lloyd said, like, I don't care if people disagree with me, that's fine, as long as they're not trolling, insulting people, attacking people, using vulgarities and all that kind of stuff. As long as they're not doing that, I don't have any problem with that. But once they start being disrespectful and out of pocket, they gotta go. Good morning, Jenny Kish. Shout out to you. I see Teresa F said the all kids program is being cut. I need to look more into that to find out more about that program. And I see that C. Walton said, I'm getting more money back. I can't complain. I work 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, and I'm happy with the plan. I could care less about what the rich is getting. Well, we'll see. I mean, the things that you are getting under this, we'll see how much this deduction actually is, how much you actually get as a result of this tax plan. And we'll see like how it affects these social programs. And the thing is, like, we have to understand that we're all interconnected. You know, cutbacks in these social programs affects not only the people who receive these programs or who directly benefit from them, but if it affects the larger society. When people have less income, when they aren't able to get social benefits or funding for schools and all that kind of stuff, and funding for food stamps and housing and stuff like that, we see what happens. We see that there's a spike in crime. We see that there's a spike in violence. We see there's a spike in drug abuse and drug selling and all that kind of stuff. So it affects us one way or the other. And we'll see. We'll see what's going to happen. Yeah, I see people have to get back to work. I see True Royal said she likes my art channel. Thanks, I appreciate it. I want to do one painting before the end of the year. That's my goal. I want to do a painting of Rihanna. That's going to be my next art project on my art channel. So for those of you who aren't familiar with my art channel, I encourage y'all to subscribe to it. It's called the Osaka Gallery. When I get a chance, I'll post a link in the cards. I only have a few subscribers right now, but that's a channel that I dedicate solely to my artwork. In addition to talking about politics and stuff like that, I also like to draw and paint and stuff like that. So y'all subscribe to that channel if you are into art and stuff like that. And I see S. Wiseman said, I don't want to support anything that hurts the least among us. Exactly. Shout out to Ghostwriter. Peace and blessings to you. And I want to thank everybody that subscribed to my art channel, and thank everyone who's watching this live stream right now. I truly appreciate your feedback and your comments. And again, I plan to have a future hangout with the brothers and the sisters talking about rebuilding the Black family, Black relationships, and empowering the Black community. So look out for that. I will do a promo once I get all the guests lined up and the time and everything established. So look out for that. And with that, I'm going to close out this Google Hangout. I appreciate your support. Peace and blessings to each and every one of you.